We've all heard of it. Some of us have got it. Some of us think we might have it. Some of us have got loved ones that have got it. And some of us just want to know a little bit more about it. Well, wherever you are on this journey, this video is going to go into what ADHD is, how you could potentially recognise it, and what we can do to support the people who suffer from it. So what is it? Attention-defecit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD, is a neurological developmental disorder which affects the behaviours and the executive functions of those who have it. Executive functions is the term that we use to describe decision-making abilities. Now, we often associate ADHD with restlessness and impulsive behaviour, and that's definitely a truth, but it's only part of the truth. It comes in 3 distinct flavours, and doctors like to call these presentations. And they are namely the hyperactive presentation, the inattentive presentation, and the combined presentation. Now, each presentation has its own set of challenges and traits, which we'll go into a bit more detail on later on in this video. Some professionals in the field say that people with ADHD have what's known as an interest-based nervous system. So if a task or a subject isn't of much interest, their central nervous system doesn't react as expected, and so we see differences in neurotransmitter function. Some studies have discovered that the mechanics in the brain are different. Neurotransmitters may be in balance or simply just not work properly, specifically dopamine and norepinephrine. Now, dopamine is the neurotransmitter that's responsible for making us feel good, and it's responsible for our reward system. Norepinephrine is the neurotransmitter that's responsible for our executive function. And because we can't experience a typical neurotransmitter function just by our nature, we look for stimuli in our external environment, and this results in the behaviours that we know and love and observe about ADHD. But what exactly are those traits and behaviours that we all know and love? Well, for the hyperactive presentation, you can definitely expect to observe the following: being unable to sit still, especially in calm or quiet surroundings, constantly fidgeting, being unable to concentrate on tasks, excessive physical movement, excessive talking, being unable to wait their turn, acting without thinking, interrupting conversations, and little or no sense of danger. That's a big list, right? But that's only one presentation. So in the inattentive presentation, you can definitely expect to observe the following: having a short attention span and being easily distracted, making careless mistakes in schoolwork, for example, appearing forgetful or losing things, being unable to stick to tasks that are tedious or time-consuming, appearing to be unable to listen to or carry out instructions, constantly changing activity or task, and having difficulty organising tasks. And then you've got the combined presentation, which is kind of like a smorgasbord of the previous two, essentially meaning, you completed it, mate, like you're riddled with it. And I'm okay saying that because guess what? I've been diagnosed with the combined presentation of ADHD. It's exhausting. Of course, there are a plethora of other behaviours and traits, and some aren't too obviously linked to ADHD. It's funny, as I started my journey, I learnt that certain things that I do are definitely part of my ADHD experience, but they're certainly not symptoms or anything that might be recognised by medical professionals. So it's worth just bearing that in mind, and I might do another video on what those behaviours could be. As part of the wider support structure for ADHD, it all starts with diagnosis. Now, diagnosis can only be made by a psychiatrist, and you need to be referred to a specialist by your GP. So your first port of call is your GP. I've done a whole video detailing what the process is in the UK of what to do when you think you might have ADHD or when you think your kids might have ADHD. And you can watch that by clicking on it in the pop-out banner over there. To support ADHD in a more holistic way, the diagnosis starts and you may be medicated there. That's definitely a form of therapy and a form of support. There's a lot of support and a number of different treatments for ADHD. Things like drug therapy that you would get through your diagnosis and your psychiatrist, support groups, coaching, nutritional therapy, counselling, and there's support groups for parents as well as ADHDers. And I think it's really important at this point to say, like, parents, if you're here and you're listening to this, you have not failed as parents. ADHD has nothing to do with bad parenting. And I'm really, really glad that you're here because you're very, very welcome in this community because you're the sort of person that's actually taking action. You're doing things to educate yourself. You're doing things to learn and make your life better at home. And I'm just so pleased to have you as part of this community. But you have not failed. You're doing a great job, okay? On that point, it's very important to reiterate that ADHD is neurological, it's hardwired. We can't help some of the things that we do, and no amount of blame or shame will change how we experience ADHD. In some cases, it might even exacerbate things and make things worse for the future. We can't help how we develop, and we can't help how our children develop. But what we can do is we can start to channel some of the impact of ADHD into wonderful, good, positive things. And of course, if you're in any doubt at all, talk to your doctor, take your meds, have a great day.